Welcome to the debate. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to a notification on your phone or, well, directly in your visual field that the corporation manufacturing your neural implant has just filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, an absolute nightmare scenario.
Right? The servers are shutting down at midnight. So in exactly 24 hours, the cognitive enhancements you rely on to do your job, the artificial emotional regulation keeping your anxiety in check.
Even the synthetic memory banks, right? The ones holding like your most recent anniversary dinner.
Exactly. All of it will just power down. And so, that brings us to the core of our discussion today. Are we engineering our ultimate liberation as a species? Or are we eagerly building a biological prison? We stand on the precipice of a totally new era of human evolution.
We really do. And we're forced to answer a question that we, frankly, can no longer ignore. Should we enthusiastically merge with technology to transcend our biological limits? Or, does engineering away our mortal, vulnerable nature actually strip us of our essential humanity?
Now, my position, rooted in the philosophy of transhumanism, looks at human biology and sees an engineering flaw, a flaw that desperately needs to be solved.
And I take the existential bioconservative perspective. I look at that exact same vulnerability, our mortality, our physical limitations, and I see the very foundation of human meaning and dignity.
But, you say dismantling. I say we are finally recognizing human biology for what it actually is.
Which is what, exactly? A mistake?
Not a mistake, but definitely not some sacred, perfectly calibrated endpoint of evolution. Look honestly at the human body. It is a duct-tape marvel of evolutionary compromises. Nick Bostrom, he describes human nature as a half-baked beginning. And honestly, he's right. Our bodies are essentially evolutionary death traps.
Death traps. That's a bit extreme, don't you think?
Well, Mother Nature is not a benevolent designer. She is this blind, indifferent engineer who has burdened us with cell replication errors that lead to cancer, plaque buildups causing dementia, and just an utterly unacceptable expiration date.
I see where you're going, but
Transhumanism champions the moral imperative of morphological freedom, the right to modify our own forms. We have to utilize tools like CRISPR, brain-computer interfaces, and eventually mind uploading to conquer the dragon tyrant of death. To accept our current biological limitations when we possess the intelligence to literally rewrite our source code, that is a profound failure of imagination.
okay. But what you casually dismiss as a failure of imagination is actually the preservation of our soul.
Our soul?
Yes. The transhumanist utopia you are describing, this frictionless, immortal, painless existence, is actually a dystopian nightmare built on profound hubris. Our finitude, our vulnerability, our very flaws, those are exactly what give human life its narrative shape.
I don't see how suffering gives life shape.
Well, the philosopher Bernard Williams made a really compelling case about this. He argued that an immortal life, completely free from the prospect of death, eventually becomes entirely meaningless. Our projects, our passions, our deep connections to one another, they matter precisely because the clock is ticking.
So we need a deadline to care about things?
Exactly. When you remove the biological constraints of a natural life cycle, human existence stagnates. How can you be truly courageous if you cannot be destroyed? How can you demonstrate genuine compassion if no one is actually vulnerable?
I think you are severely romanticizing a tragedy here. Finding meaning in death is just a psychological coping mechanism. It's something humanity developed because, historically, we couldn't do anything to stop it.
It's not a coping mechanism. It's an acknowledgement of human psychology.
But if we conquer aging at the cellular level, if we figure out how to clear senescent cells, right, and repair telomere degradation, we aren't destroying life's meaning. We are exponentially expanding it.
Expanding it into what, though? You assume human consciousness can sustain infinite accumulation without losing its center.
Well, Bostrom's utilitarian logic is airtight here. If a human life is worth living, it is worth saving, and if it's worth saving, it is worth extending. An indefinitely healthy lifespan simply opens up the capacity for projects, for learning, for relationships that can span centuries. The idea that we need the constant threat of annihilation to, like, appreciate a sunset or love our families is a massive philosophical failure.
To try and turn a man into a god is inherently dehumanizing because it strips away the friction that requires virtue.
Let's test that logic against reality then. Think about the basic medical interventions we use every single day. The literature uses a perfect analogy for this, the seatbelt.
Oh, the seatbelt analogy, right?
Yeah. If extending life and fighting our natural vulnerability is somehow a violation of our narrative meaning, why do you wear a seatbelt? Why do we prescribe antibiotics for an infection or use chemotherapy to fight cancer? Treating aging is just the ultimate seatbelt.
No, those are completely different categories.
How? It is repairing cellular damage to prevent involuntary death. Accepting biological decay while enthusiastically utilizing basic medicine is massive cognitive dissonance. It's a dangerous status quo bias. We only think an 80-year lifespan is natural, and therefore good, because we've just never had the option of an 800-year lifespan.
Treating a specific disease to restore a human being to a natural baseline of health is categorically different from radically redesigning the human organism to achieve immortality.
Is it though?
Yes. A doctor setting a broken bone is participating in healing. A transhumanist trying to rewrite the human genome to abolish death is participating in hyperagency. But okay, let's follow your premise into the real world. If we extend life indefinitely, how exactly are we living it? Because the physical body is only one half of the transhumanist equation.
Right, the mind.
Exactly. The other half is the mind, and this is where your vision moves from merely hubristic to genuinely terrifying.
Terrifying. I'd say it is our ultimate liberation. If we are going to live for centuries, we absolutely must expand our cognitive capacity to match those longer lives.
And invite corporations directly into our prefrontal cortex.
Hear me out. The futurist Ray Kurzweil paints a very clear picture of the coming decades, specifically the arrival of the singularity, the point where artificial intelligence surpasses human comprehension. To survive that, we will need nanobots in the capillaries of our brains, linking our neocortex directly to the cloud.
Which is a horrifying prospect.
No, brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, like Neuralink, are the necessary first step. Initially, they are purely therapeutic. They read the electrical signals in the motor cortex of a paralyzed person and translate those signals to a computer, allowing them to communicate at the speed of thought.
Sure, the therapeutic applications are noble, I won't deny that.
But the end goal is seamless AI symbiosis. If we do not merge our minds with artificial intelligence, humanity will be left behind as a biological relic.
And in the rush to avoid becoming a biological relic, you are inviting the sheer devastation of human autonomy. Let's look at the actual mechanism of these brain-computer interfaces. Devices like Neuralink are bidirectional.
Meaning they read and write.
Exactly. They don't just passively read your action potentials to move a cursor on a screen. They have the capacity to stimulate neural activity. They literally write data back into the brain. You are fundamentally opening up the human mind to cyber attacks.
We will have security measures.
We are talking about forced software updates executed on a person's brain, altering their neurochemistry simply to maintain a device's security protocols.
Look, every paradigm-shifting technology carries novel risks. When we went digital, we developed cryptography to secure our financial systems. We will develop bio-cybersecurity to secure our neural implants.
You're trusting tech companies with your literal thoughts.
What legal scholars are now calling neuro rights, the right to cognitive liberty and mental privacy, that will become the absolute foundation of 21st century law. To reject the technology entirely because of the threat of hacking is ignoring the profound alleviation of suffering it offers. Imagine curing treatment-resistant depression by perfectly regulating neural circuitry.
But the hacking isn't a bug in the system. In a hyper-capitalist framework, the hacking is the feature.
That's incredibly cynical.
Let's go back to that vivid scenario of the bankrupt corporation from the beginning of the show. Transhumanism effectively turns the human mind into software as a service, SaaS. Think about what it actually means to put your consciousness on a subscription model.
That's a worst-case scenario.
Is it? We already see digital platforms utilizing algorithms to manipulate user engagement today. They feed us tailored outrage just to keep our eyes on a screen. Now imagine that exact same corporate architecture directly stimulating your dopamine pathways.
I mean, we would have regulations against that.
Imagine a neural implant that chemically incentivizes a feeling of profound satisfaction when you purchase a specific product or, God forbid, when you agree with a specific political advertisement. You are trading the innermost sanctuary of human thought for an end-user license agreement controlled by billionaires.
That implies we are utterly passive victims of technology, which we aren't. We will build regulatory guardrails. But notice the trajectory here. We move from the fear of extending the body to the fear of expanding the mind. And logically, that takes us to the ultimate frontier, the physical reality of designing our descendants.
Right. From hacking the adult mind, we inevitably move to hacking the human genome.
Yes, and we should welcome that.
That is exactly the biological point of no return. Altering an adult mind with an implant is arguably a reversible individual choice. Altering the human germline makes those hacks heritable. It alters the human species permanently.
And I defend the bioethical principle of procreative beneficence. The philosopher Julian Savulescu argues that we have a moral duty, mind you, to use gene editing technologies to give our children the best possible chance at a good life.
A good life defined by who?
Let's look at the mechanism of CRISPR-Cas9. This isn't science fiction anymore. It is a bacterial defense mechanism we have successfully hijacked. We can program an enzyme to act as molecular scissors, hunting down the exact biological typo in our DNA that causes devastating conditions like cystic fibrosis or Huntington's disease, and literally snip it out of the genome.
Somatic therapy is one thing, but germline editing?
These are single-gene horrors caused by a random misfire in the natural lottery. We have the tool to wipe them from humanity indefinitely. And frankly, why should we stop at therapy?
Oh, here we go.
If we can safely use CRISPR to enhance a child's disease resistance, or their physical stamina, or their cognitive baseline, we are morally obligated to do so. The natural lottery is inherently blind and profoundly unfair.
The natural lottery may be blind, but replacing it with human design introduces a tyranny of expectations that will shatter the family dynamic.
How does it shatter the family?
Michael Sandel hits the nail on the head when he critiques this pursuit as hyper-agency. It is a Promethean aspiration to remake nature to serve our own desires. Think about what procreative beneficence actually means in practice.
It means giving your child an advantage.
No. When you start designing children for optimal intelligence or specific physical traits, you destroy the foundation of unconditional parental love. Children cease to be mysterious gifts to be nurtured, and instead become consumer products with manufacturing specifications to be met.
That's absurd.
Is it? If a child fails to live up to their engineered genetic potential, who is at fault? The child or the parent who purchased the wrong upgrade?
That is an incredibly reductive view of parenting. Parents already exhibit this so-called hyper-agency every single day.
Really?
Yes! We give our children prenatal vitamins, we feed them organic diets, we pay for elite tutors, we move to specific neighborhoods for better schools. We do everything in our power to mold their environment to give them an advantage.
But that's entirely different.
Genetic enhancement is merely a more precise biological extension of what parents have literally always done. Why is sending your child to an elite academy to boost their intelligence acceptable, but giving them a genetic resistance to Alzheimer's a violation of human dignity?
Because environmental advantages allow a child to respond, to rebel, to shape their own path. Education engages the child's agency. Germline genetic engineering locks in another person's biological destiny before they even draw their first breath. You are commodifying human life at the cellular level.
I think you're confusing biology with destiny.
And the societal impact is devastating. We are looking down the barrel of a literal genetic divide. The political scientist Francis Fukuyama identifies what he calls Factor X, that essential shared human nature that underpins our moral equality.
Factor X is a vague concept.
It's the basis of human rights. If the wealthy can purchase cognitive and physical enhancements for their embryos, while the unenhanced poor are relegated to their natural biological baseline, we destroy Factor X. We aren't just exacerbating income inequality, we are hard-coding a socioeconomic lottery into our DNA. We are creating a permanent biological underclass. You are talking about the end of human equality because we will no longer share a common human nature.
You are falling victim to the naturalistic fallacy, the assumption that because our shared biological baseline is natural, it is inherently good, and because a trait is engineered, it is somehow inherently bad.
I didn't say natural was perfect. I said it was shared.
Human history is the story of manipulating our environment to overcome biological constraints. Directly manipulating our DNA is merely the most efficient way to liberate humanity from the chains of our evolutionary past. As for the inequality argument, the solution to unequal access to a transformative technology is not to ban the technology, it's to subsidize it.
Subsidize genetic enhancements?
Yes, we can implement policies to ensure universal access to genetic therapies, just as we strive to provide universal health care. To deny a cure to a child suffering from a genetic disease today because you are worried about a hypothetical class divide tomorrow is ethically unjustifiable.
Let me be clear. I am not arguing against curing disease. Using somatic gene therapy to cure a living patient is medicine, but altering the germline to engineer superior traits is eugenics dressed up as consumer choice.
Oh, eugenics. That's a loaded term.
It's the accurate term. The moment you define what constitutes a better or enhanced human being, you implicitly define the unenhanced as inferior. It creates a metric of human worth based purely on technological optimization. It is a fundamental threat to human dignity.
Well, let's summarize where this philosophical clash leaves us, because the contrast between our views couldn't be starker.
No, it really couldn't.
From the transhumanist perspective, human nature as it exists today is an unfinished draft. To reject technologies like bidirectional neural implants, CRISPR gene editing, and radical cellular life extension out of some romantic existential fear is to condemn humanity to preventable suffering. It guarantees intellectual stagnation in the face of superintelligent AI, and it accepts the ultimate, daily tragedy of involuntary death as a permanent rule. We have the intelligence to rewrite our source code. We have the capacity to merge with our creations and reach for the singularity. It is our moral imperative to become more than we currently are.
And from the bioconservative perspective, I maintain that throwing away our biological boundaries in pursuit of a frictionless immortal existence risks destroying everything that makes life worth living. You are willing to trade our vulnerability, our deep capacity for authentic connection, and our moral equality for a hyper-capitalist dystopia, a world where our minds are monetized software as a service, our genomes are consumer products, and our essential humanity is permanently lost in the machine.
Despite our profound disagreement on the outcome, I think there is a critical point of convergence here. Both of us acknowledge that the convergence of NBIC technologies, nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, and cognitive science is not some distant science fiction fantasy.
No, not at all.
The mechanisms are being tested in labs right now. It is arriving, and it will irrevocably alter our species.
We certainly agree on the timeline and the staggering magnitude of what is coming. The profound, unresolved disagreement lies entirely in whether this transition represents our ultimate liberation from biology or our existential suicide.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to the precipice where we started. We are moving from a closed biological loop to a completely open engineered horizon. As we sign off, we want to leave you, the listener, to ponder your own red lines.
Think about the boundaries of your own identity.
Think about how you feel when your smartphone battery dies, and now imagine that dependency wired directly into your visual cortex. Would you trade your vulnerable, mortal humanity for the promise of digital infinity?
Because as the singularity approaches, society can no longer afford to leave these philosophical questions unanswered.
What will you choose when the upgrade is offered?